What's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic weekend. Almost through with January. Rocking and rolling through the year already. Hope your 2022 is starting off nice. Bit of an open chat, but also a going to do a review on the last video that I posted up. Basically, the when to get out of the hobby video. And a lot of feedback, a lot of guys coming back and commenting on that video. So want to be able to carry that conversation a little bit further. There are certain things that when I put together a regular video like that, which admittedly I don't do a lot of them, but hey, Dad's Garage is in. Good seeing you, buddy. But whenever I put a video like that together, one of the things that I try to do is I try not to go too deep anymore. I try to keep it fairly short. So there's a couple of points that I didn't make. I was trying to keep the video kind of nice. And so in the whole process of that, there are a couple of things that I didn't bring up through the course of that video that basically we can touch on here on the live chat. We got a little bit more interaction. Well, actually a lot more interaction here with the live show. But the main thing is, when we're talking about that whole when to get out of the car hobby video, again, kind of a weird thing that triggered that. I gave the example of the dude that was sitting in the chair that really did look like he was bored to tears. That's the thing that really kind of spurred it on for me, because that wasn't the only example of that. And I've seen guys literally look like they're about to start crying with, what could be $300,000-$400,000 worth of race kit sitting there. It's like seeing a kid cry at Disneyland. It's just like, what? But, with the amount of, with the amount of investment that a lot of these guys put into these cars, when things aren't going right, things get real expensive. And when you've already sunk that much of your life and your net worth into a hobby, or into anything for that matter, when it's not going well, you really do start to question some things. And you could tell there was some life-altering contemplations going on in the minds of some of these dudes that I was seeing. Hey, I'm not immune to it, but man, these dudes were deep into it. But I'll check in with you guys. It's open chat, so we can pretty much talk about anything. Ryan is in. Clutched is in. Gary is in. What's up? Dad's saying RT Life did a video a few days ago saying Dodge is bringing stage kits to direct connection for the 392. Have you heard anything or seen anything? No, I haven't. As a matter of fact, that was brought to my attention. I went hunting through the direct connection catalog and saw absolutely nothing that would suggest there was anything for the 392, which is a pretty big shame. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the biggest hole that Dodge has in their game. And look, I don't even care if they don't offer camshaft options. Camshaft options start to get real pricey real quick, and they're hard to get past through EPA. The HHR cam is the one that's offered for the 5.7. That's actually their stage 2 cam. Put that at 392 as well. Power gains are going to be, somewhere around the 25 odd horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. 20 to 25 with that cam, give or take. But, it's not an emissions legal cam, so it's going to be difficult there. If they're talking about tunes, things like that, you're not going to drag a lot of power out of a 392 with just a tune. I don't care if you put it on E85. It's still, you're not going to get there from here with just a tune. All of the benefits of tuning a 392 really do come from transmission tuning. And I'll take that a step further. The latest operating system for the 392 is really good in terms of making power, especially down low with the new cam mapping. So I don't know what they're going to do for the 392, but if RT Life is saying that they're coming out with them, When? What? Okay, post it up. Let's see what these stage kits are. There's always somebody that's going to say, breaking news, I'm the only person on the planet that knows something. Or breaking news, will Dodge come out with a thing for 392s? Dodge is coming out with a thing. Just show me, man. That's all I'm asking. I would love to see what it is. Is it cold air intake? I mean, look, okay, so let's break down what there is available for the 392 in the catalog. You can do the TA conversion. It's about $700. Is it worth it? I don't know, because the Hellcat airbox and the Hellcat air filter, well, we've damn near run 10s in with the SRT, was it 4 years ago? With just that setup with an uncracked motor just tuned on a drag pack. Yeah, it had some weight reduction, but my car went 1130s. So that was on 20s, by the way, with no weight reduction. So what are they going to do? I mean, look, if it's camshafts, fantastic. Partner up with Comp Cams, partner up with Texas Speed, get some cams together and see what you can do about making some power. The only downside to that, number one, won't be emissions legal, more than likely. And number two, how are you going to guarantee gains? I mean, you've got people from Denver, Colorado to Shreveport, Louisiana that might be putting these kits together. It's kind of hard to get an idea for what kind of power you're going to pick up when you've got that much density altitude variance to work with. Would more cam do any good at higher altitudes? It's not going to do near as much as it would at lower altitudes. So there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the stage kits for a 392. I just don't know what they're going to offer. But again, getting back to what is offered, you can do a TA conversion, Hellcat airbox with the Hellcat filter with the snorkel, really good kit there. But getting back to the TA thing, if you've never seen the TA, if this is the filter, there's like this jog. It comes out down and over, and it's kind of a weird way that it... Anyway, when the TAs first came out, I tried to get that kit to put on my SRT, and it was not a supported part. In other words, I couldn't just order one at the time, and by the time I started thinking about it or even worrying about messing with it, I had already moved on and gotten a Hellcat. So there's that. For guys that were, may ask, can you put that kit on a Hellcat? No, if it's a 15 or 16. And I probably wouldn't waste my time with it if it were going on a 17. I don't know how all of that would work, although you can use the airbox from a Hellcat in a 392. I don't think that it would all work together because the size of the couplings and all that. So anyway, and how the couplings are run and everything. I don't know, you could probably fabricate something. I just don't know if it would help. But anyway, kind of some lateral thinking in real time there. You've got the original cold air kit that's floating around in there, and that's the one that I tested. But aside from that, I just don't see anything. My thing with the 392 cars is, why don't they offer a different rear gear option? I've been pushing for that forever, and I've said this on, I don't know how many times I've said this already. If the 1320 had come with a 327 or a 331 rear gear, I would have one sitting in the shop right there right now. And it didn't come with that rear gear set. They didn't, there's a lot they could have done with the 392 for the 1320 that they didn't do. And so I don't know. The big deal with the 392 stage kits is, are they going to be emissions legal, and how do you go about making a 392 with a stage kit? How do you make that emissions legal and warrantable? I don't know, but we'll see. And listen, I'm cool if they are doing it. I hope they are doing it. But in terms of bolt-ons and things like that, the 392s pretty much already have, well, they do have the manifold, the exhaust. They've got the newer operating system, the 19 and up operating system, which is really good. You've got, what are they going to offer? A larger throttle body? Unless you port the intake, a larger throttle body does you absolutely no good. And when I say port the intake, it is a significant port job. And I know this because that's what I've ported. I've lost count, a lot. 30, 35, 40. I mean, I believe me, I've got all my kit to port it here. So, hey, Dad's Garage, thank you very much. Asking, can you talk about how active exhaust works when it opens, in which drive modes? Also, wiring the valve open versus the plug-in deal from Z Automotive, or is it just a waste of time and money? So the way that the active exhaust system works is there are in the systems, I don't have my computer with me, but if you go into your HP tuners, open up your HP tuners software, go to the systems tab. I think it's the first one or the second one that pulls up, first tab or second tab that pulls up under systems. It will actually break everything down in terms of the active exhaust. The way that it works is it is load based. The lower the load, the less angle, well, let me try to, where's it? I don't have one. Okay, so if you can imagine my hand being the blade, it looks like a little donut. It's got a hole in the middle of it. Sitting straight up and down, that's fully closed. There are angles to the thing, and you'll see that in the charts. Track mode, it's open 100% of the time. By the way, it does do a check, okay? The best way to handle the active exhaust is to tune it with your HP Tuner software. And you can tune it based on street, sport, track, and you can tune it within the tables. You can have it a little bit more open if you want a little bit more sound. You can have it wide open all the time if that's the sound that you want. And you literally can tune it side by side or side to side. So let me tell you what I've discovered with it. First of all, with the wiring of them open and all of that, dude, no, there was some hacky things that you could do. You would cut a section out, put a piece of, if you put a different cat back in it, you would have that section, the motors cut, you could mount them. It's just a bunch of hacky stuff. You can wire them to be open. They've got some cheater things that work. I mean, they do work. Again, I just do it within the tune. So I don't have to worry about any of that, to be honest with you. But the funny thing about it is that when I did the testing with my car with the Reso Delete, it didn't matter if I put everything to fully shut or wide open, the car really didn't sound a whole lot different. So at least not on the inside. And really with mine, I just have mine at 100% all the time. It doesn't matter what mode I'm in. My baffles are wide open. But again, to kind of walk you through what it is, there is and are times when the blades are going to be more shut, and that's especially in street mode when you're just kind of putting around. The blades are shut, and obviously, again, there's a hole in the middle of them, but you're just baffling, in essence, the exhaust. The higher the load, the more they'll open to the point where if you tip in, I think it's if you're producing more than 300 pound-feet of torque. For the most part, I think it's 300 pound-feet of torque. They will be fully wide open at that point. So, but yeah, that's how they work. It's all based on load, more or less. It's throttle position. And it's all based on the actual load that the engine has. But again, if you want to find it, you go into your HP tuners, not your scanner, but your actual HP tuner software editor, go into the systems tab, and it'll pop up. It's on the right hand side of the screen. It just says active exhaust, and you can see all of the tables right there. It's pretty easy. So hopefully that answers your question. It's kind of funny. Again, I've played with that a lot. Mine won't even go through the self-check with everything put to open, wide open all the time. It's just, you fire it up. Normally you'll hear them go when they do the self-check. Mine doesn't even self-check anymore. So Dads, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Saying thank you so much. Great explanation. Man, I mean, it's, appreciate it, buddy. So yeah, if you go in and change some things in that table, What you might notice is you may or may not notice any change in the way that the thing sounds, because when those things open and shut, you got to remember, unless they are just hammered all the way shut, every little bit that they open up is just like your throttle blade. Remember how when we were talking about how the old TBI cars, they feel so torquey because every amount that you open that blade is a large percent of opening it first from 90 degrees, in other words. So at 90 degrees, if I kick open this, that is a huge percentage of opening, right? But if I kick it open a little bit more, that's only 50% more gain. Open up a little bit more, that's only 30% more gain. Kind of gives you an idea. So once those things start to crack, really anything more than about, I don't know, 30% open, it's all the noise is still coming out. So, but get in there and play with it. I know guys that will chill them out a little bit more in street mode and then just go wide open everywhere else. I have I have tried to play around with some different settings with it, and I just kind of said screw it, left it alone, left it at 100% wide open and let her eat. So, but yeah, it's super easy to do. Just make sure you do both sides. Don't forget to do both sides. Dad say I'm totally stock and probably will stay that way for some time. Just hit 1,000 miles tonight on the new one. Very cool, man. Congratulations. Very cool. 1,000 miles is a big one. Don't forget to do your first early oil change. I always recommend 1,000 miles, 2,500 miles, and then get on your cycle, get onto your normal cycle. Then it's 6,000 miles. That's when I do mine. So, my Hellcat. The guy that originally owned my Hellcat, it was dealer serviced. That dude was every bit as bad. This is why I bought my car, by the way. This dude was every bit as bad as me. He took that car in at 500 miles, 1,000 miles, 2,500 miles, and 3,000 miles. And I did it 6,000 mile service. So, my dude hooking it up. But, yeah, that's Dad's saying always do it 1,000. Very good, very good. Happening tomorrow. I like it. I just did mine too. If you saw the Instagram post, I put mine. It was up on the race ramps. Dad said then I do 3,500 miles. I know overkill the old chat. Oh yeah, no, I'm so bad about it. I'm go do a lot of oil changes. That's for sure. Let me catch up with you guys. But hey, Dads, yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that very, very much. Bear with me here. Don't want to miss anybody. Oh, here we go. Dennis saying, talk 392. Man, I love talking 392. If you got a question, shoot it up, man. I'll be more than happy to talk about it. Most of the time, guys are asking about cams, intake manifolds, throttle bodies, and exhaust. That's pretty much the route that most dudes do with the 392s. We can talk boost if you want to, but my thoughts on boost on 392s is the same with LS, with 5.7s, and everything else. If you want to get real serious about it, it's about time to cheddar up, because you're going to have to pull that thing apart, open up ring gap. If you really want to make serious horsepower, you got to make a serious commitment to those things, but they will absolutely do it. Oh, Clutch is saying he got his full bolt-on E85 Scat pack dynoed on a dyno comp at 503 horsepower on stock cam. I've heard that's pretty high, and I'm getting skeptical because I think it's way too high. Man, look, every dyno reads different, brother. You know this. And so take it with a grain of salt. It sounds to me like it's an uncorrected number with some scaling going on. But yeah, no, 503 is not a legit number, not for a stock cam car on really any dyno for that matter. So it's something's going on with the dyno. It sounds to me like there may be a barometric pressure sensor that's kind of jacked up with a with the correction factor. But that being said, just remember that number is, all things being equal, is just a gauge. It just tells you, look, the car is healthy, if nothing else, right? And as somebody who has got miles of experience on a dyno, I can tell you that the same dyno on the same day can read differently. And I have had situations where I've had weather stations, particularly the barometric pressure sensor, be the bane of my freaking existence, both in the shop and at other shops where cars were being dynoed. And you want to talk about somebody losing their mind. The first time this happened to me at another shop was when somebody was dynoing a car with one of my cams in it that should have been really strong. The guy's bragging to all his friends that his car is crazy strong. They put it on a dyno because it was street tuned. Put it on a dyno and it didn't make any power. And the reason for that is a barometric pressure sensor was saying that the barometric pressure was like 36 inches of mercury, which, to put it in perspective, would mean that, I don't know if the barometric pressure is that high at the center of the freaking planet. It was just nuts. It was some stupid number. So it was way yanking the corrected number. It was pulling like 100 horsepower or something stupid. I forget what it was. Anyway, it's a complete disaster. And by the time it was all said and done, everybody was weirded out by the whole thing. Then about 6 months, could have been 4 months or 5 months. Anyway, within a very short amount of time, the barometric pressure sensor on the Mustang dyno started skitzing out. And I got really good at replacing and swapping out boards in that dyno. So yeah, that was a real treat. Ended up doing everything on manual entry, which was a pain in the ass because you always had to make sure, what is the exact temperature. Somebody find weather underground. We got to, it's just a complete mess. So anyway, yeah, 503 is a little bit high. On a Mustang dyno, a real healthy 392, if it's a calibrated machine, is going to make corrected numbers. Corrected's going to be a little bit difficult this time of year because cars are just making a lot of power. But corrected numbers right now, to see something making 420 would be a pretty healthy 392, 420 to the rear wheels. On a dyno jet, you're looking at 455, 460-ish. And to give you an idea, typically a cammed car with long tubes, maybe a larger throttle body and a ported intake manifold, depending on the dyno. Again, if it's a generous dyno jet, a true dyno jet like a 248 old school drum dyno, inertia dyno, you'd be seeing numbers like 500, 503, 507, somewhere in that range. But most, if not all, dyno jet numbers that I've seen, I think the highest dyno jet number, somewhere around 4 tuned cars, somewhere around 467, 470, something like that. So anyway, hopefully that gives you an idea of how everything shakes out. Oh, Cubby's saying that Dodge dealership's ordering a new PCM to fix his race cooldown mode. They still don't know why it's not working. Any ideas? I would probably check to make sure that it is reading air temperature correctly. It sounds to me more like a sensor than anything else. PCM wouldn't have anything to do with what's going on. The only time that the cooldown feature will not work is if the PCM thinks that ambient air temperature is below 55 degrees, if memory serves me correctly. It just won't kick the chiller on because it doesn't think that it would do an efficient job cooling everything off. That's my understanding of it. So I would say air temperature sensor, it's right there, right on the freaking tube. Make sure that it's pointed in the right direction. It's going to have a little look. It shouldn't matter, but it can. So this is one of the things I used to make sure I did with the 392 cars, especially, is making sure that the air temperature sensor is pointed in the right direction. A lot of people don't realize it's a thing, and it's easy if you're screwing around with something to just bump it and turn it. But let me get a piece of paper real quick, and I'll kind of draw this up so you can see what I'm talking about. What the hell? Do I have any paper over here? And this will help you just in general. One of those things where it's like one of these little fine tune things that if you remember to do it, there's a bit of a cheat code on this. So I'm going to draw what the connector looks like. And you'll know this as soon as you see the top of this thing. You'll see on the connector, it's shaped basically like this. This is if you're looking straight down on top of it. This little tab is supposed to be in the direction of airflow. So if your tube is right here, that's how you want that thing sitting in the tube. The reason for that is if you look at the sensor itself, this is just in general for you guys. The sensor itself, oddly enough, looks like a Q-tip. That's what it looks like. Okay, it looks like that sitting in the tube. So if you turn it to the side, what can happen is that this can shield direct airflow to this little bitty bulb right there. Remember the old mass air meters? This is doing basically the same thing. It's not measuring mass air, but it is registering temperature in the same way that the filament measures airflow through resistance. That's what's going on with this little bulb right here. And if it's turned, the airflow just can't see it. So it's a bit shielded. And what can happen in 392 world is that with the fan wash on, it ends up heating up the tube. And if that thing isn't pointed in the right direction, that sensor can get heat soaked and it's not going to give a properly good, accurate reading in some cases to the PCM. Does it make a big difference? I don't know. All I know is that I've always made sure that that sensor was pointed in the right direction, and nobody touched my times. So I guess I'm doing something right with an air temperature sensor. But anyway, make sure the air temperature sensor is working. And I would go through, I would look for on a data log, if they're running data logs on this thing, if there's something out of whack, if there's a sensor, low temperature radiator, your LTR or your intercooler, making sure that temperature sensor isn't hung up, didn't get disconnected, there's not a frayed wire, to where it's default. I think the default is like negative 40 degrees or something like that. So there's a couple of temperature sensors that you want to make sure are working. Replacing the PCM, I don't know that that's going to fix the problem, because the PCM, everything else working fine, doesn't really, it's just going to go off of whatever sensor input it's being shown. Roy's saying, would I be waiting for warmer weather? Yeah, we've had some pretty cool weather down here. DA has been obnoxious. Barometric pressure has been through the roof. Was not able to run Friday. The track was a little bit too cold, and quite honestly, when it's cold like that, I am like, I get there, I make 2 hits and I'm out. Maybe 3 if I can get them worked in. But the problem is as the DA drops, a lot of guys get out there set to kill, and you're making a ton of power with a cold track and potentially sketchy fuel quality. Anyway, long story short, you got to be on your game, and a lot of guys set to kill trying to run a number, and that's when bad things can happen. So I try to get a couple of hits in early on. I'll eat a Frito pie and a couple of hot dogs, and then I'm out. See ya. Try to set a record and be gone. It's what we're going to try to do next Friday. I'm going to try to beat that 10-10, and it's going to be tough to do, but the air is forecasted to be better than what it was. I don't know if I'll be able to beat it, but if I can get close, that'll be cool. I'll be happy with that. Madera's asking, hey, B, what do you think of the 2 Ford 427 variants as swap candidates for a Ford shoebox street rod? they would be fun. I think that if you want to build an FE based, not a 385, but an FE based Ford combination, the side order of Fords are great. The Ford, listen, you'd be better off getting a 385 if you want to do a big block build. The reason why is that parts are so much easier to build or to come up with. The FE motors, a little bit thinner casting, a little bit lighter, but you can't really bore them out. The 385 series, you can put a 514 in the thing and have an engine that's making 490 horsepower, close to 600 pound-feet of torque. You don't even have to spin the thing past 5,200 RPM. And, for something like that, it would just be a lot of fun. I had a 472 cubic inch 385 in my Superformance Mark III Cobra, and it was pretty nasty, to say the least. So anyway, you can have a lot of fun with that combination. Again, the 427s are neat. If you're doing it for like a nostalgia reason, then it's cool. All of those older engines are really good. I'm pretty sure that if you're asking about the 427, you've already thought about the 385 series of engines, which is basically 460, 429, that family. And to be honest with you, I get it. Everybody's doing 385. The reason why they're doing 385 is just super easy to get parts. And you put it to like this, you go, the generic hot rod version of that is 4-inch stroker crank, pick a piston that'll give you 10-to-1 compression, Super Cobra jet heads, RPM air gap intake, any of the HP series, like put a 950 HP or 850 HP carburetor on the top of the thing. Headers, whatever fits a big block in your chassis, it doesn't matter because beggars can't be choosers at this point. Cam specs somewhere in the, I don't know, you can put any cam in the thing, it's going to make a ton of power. Somewhere in the 500-ish lift, go 238, 242 on the intake side and like 250 on the exhaust side. Something like, again, give or take. Fun street cam. Intake center line, obviously you need pistons for this, but intake center line of about 107, lobe separation angle about 108 to 110. Put her in the oven at 350, let her eat. It would be a lot of fun. It's an easy combination to put together. So, do a roller conversion, obviously, and I think you'd be pretty happy with that type of a setup. Gary said, I run the full upper to lower with tube and filter. Upper lid does take some minor modding, but I love it. Very nice. On a Scatty. Very cool. There's Dad's. Yep. Talking about the oil changes. I like it. Amaro is saying, I will be installing a Fastman 88 millimeter throttle body on my 392. Will I need to port my intake? Yes, you will. 100%. To get the most out of that throttle body, you will absolutely need to port your intake. I'm a big proponent of the Fastman throttle bodies. We ran 84s on literally everything that didn't have a Dr. Diffin Speed 85 millimeter throttle body on it. And in fact, that's what I port to. I port to a Dr. Differential 85 millimeter throttle body. And you got to do a lot of work in the throat on those intakes. A little bit of gasket matching doesn't hurt, but the main work that you have to do is a lot of throat work. I've opened them up to the point where I've had to backfill them with epoxy. So believe me when I tell you, I know the struggle is real with the 392. But yeah, I would highly suggest getting that intake ported before you put that throttle body on there. That's saying that I do 3,500 miles. I know I overkill oil changes. Listen, there's no such thing as overkill when it comes to oil changes. If you're running them hard, maintain them hard. That's the only thing you got to do, and you'll be in good shape. Oh, Clutch is in saying, yep, I have the Fastman 88 on mine and I ported my intake and saw some big gains. I like it. Thank you again, Dad's Garage. I appreciate it, buddy. And yeah, and again, the issue, and I don't have one here, and it pains me that I don't have some extra 392 intake so I could show you this, but if you look through the throat of a 392 intake, it will come in, and from my point of view, it comes in, it drops down, and then curves over. And it's the drop down and curves part that can screw you up. And so I do a lot of work reshaping that intake manifold. And it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it takes, depending on how bad the intakes are, because each one of those intakes is, well, it's its own person, so to speak. Some are in great shape. They're real smooth. Others, because it's multiple layers, are all over the place in terms of how they're put together. So I've been able to get some pretty decent power out of some really ugly intakes, but I'm not going to tell you that it's the primary a primary driver, but I will tell you that a larger throttle body and a pretty well sorted out intake can be worth 6-8 horsepower. I've seen as much as 13 was the most I've ever gotten out of one, but that intake was in pretty rough shape. That car dynoed a little bit low, and I was able to bring back a pretty decent amount of power on that car. So, you know, it was what it was. That intake is the intake that that I put so much work into that intake that I literally had to backfill it with epoxy. That was in bad shape. Gary's saying, I did one at 500 miles and then on the track. I'm at 10,000 miles now and 5 oil changes in. That's about me too. Actually, I'm a lot more now. I'm at, what am I, like 19,000 miles, I think is what I've got on that car. And I mean, I'm doing at least 3 or 4 oil changes per year minimum. So yeah, for sure. Always good. Just keep it changed out. Doesn't matter what oil you're using, as long as you're changing it regularly. That's all that matters. Amy Ed saying, happy 2022. Let's hope Dodge keeps it together this year and makes cars offer some good stuff. Hopefully we get some stuff from Direct Connection. That's really what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm driving for. If Direct Connection can figure out a way to start giving the 392 guys some things that would really make sense for them, and for the 5.7 guys for that matter, it works both ways for those guys. I get that they're not going to support the gay trag rear ends, but if they can at least support the ZFs in that endeavor, that would go a long way. I mean, that would really show a new level of dedication to that platform. And these are the guys that are really holding up holding the flag, in some cases the highest. I know that the Hellcat variants get a lot of the shine, but the real heavy lifting's done by the 392 and the 5.7 guys. Ed's checking in with, I'm currently running a 306 rear. If I change it to a 373, do I have to go through the entire dyno system again, or is it just plug and play? Can't seem to get a straight answer on this one. So if you got a 300 and you're running the gay trag rear end, you can just swap in the 373 diff, okay? But you're putting gears in it and all of that. I know that Richmond and Motive, I think, was making gears. I never really messed with any of that. If you've got the ZF rear gear and you put a 370 in the car, no, you don't have to mess with anything. You just install the gear. Now, if you're talking about going a different route, like putting a Hellcat rear gear, you're trying to do something like that, no, you're going to have to stick with the gay track stuff. The problem that you're going to be faced with is just the cost of it. That is a $3,000 bit of kit if you get that stuff through HHP. I'm not sure what the dealerships are charging for a 370 rear gear gay trag unit, but it ain't cheap. So just something to consider. The issue that you're going to run into, though, with the gear, could potentially be the fact that you're going to hit predictive shift early. So there's that to consider. In other words, you try to go through the gears and it's going to try to command an earlier shift because it thinks you're going to hit a rev limiter that is set up with an acceleration protocol that is not expecting a 3.7 anything gear. But that being said, I mean, we've run 3.92 gears on Chargers, the ZF 3.92s, on Chargers with 426s, and didn't really run into any issues. And that was a NAG 1 car, by the way. So again, just some of my experience with those cars. Typically, the older cars, though, the gay track guys, when they would make a change, that would be the gear that they would go to. We just didn't have a lot of that going on. All of our experience really was with 15s and up. So it was all 370 and 392 swaps. Callus is asking, are there any superchargers out there that weigh under 100 pounds? Oh, yeah, there's a ton. They're all centrifugal, though. So Vortec, Paxton, ProCharger, all of those are going to weigh less. Now, if you're talking about positive displacement superchargers, the problem that you run into with positive displacement superchargers is all the extra tchotchkes that you have to have for a positive displacement supercharger to make it work, which is, in essence, all of your low temperature radiators, your heat exchangers, basically your pumps and the fluid that has to fill all that. I think the lightest of the group would actually be the IHI, would be one of the lighters. Well, no, I take it back. Probably Whipple might be the lightest, followed by the E-Force, which is the Maggie. So probably one of those two might be lighter, but I'm not 100% sure. Clutch is asking, best cam for 6-speed trans scat pack. I would offer up to you something that looks like my Warlock grind that you can find over at Dr. Differential Speed. And the fun thing about the 6-speeds is you can get away with a little bit more cam, a little bit tighter lobe separation angle. So I would say something along the lines of 108 degree intake center line, 224 on the intake, probably 232 on exhaust, pretty typical type. But I would tighten up the intake center or the lobe separation angle. I would probably put something together that would have a 112. And I would, the lift doesn't really matter. All the lift on those is usually going to hover somewhere around anywhere between 584 and 605. The lift pretty much irrelevant with those duration numbers. So with that locked out, it would be a nasty sounding cam, and it would actually pull pretty hard through the mid-range. Be a lot of fun to drive. That is the cam basically that I was talking about with the car that the guy said, oh, this thing hauls ass, but it flaked out on the dyno because the barometric pressure thing broke. That's almost identical, those specs. No, that's a little bit bigger than the specs that were on that cam. So you can technically go that big. The only thing is that you're going to have to spin that thing pretty hard. That's why I would want to try to tighten up the lobe separation angle. Another way you could go would be say a 224, 228, 224, 230, lobe separation angle around 114, just to kind of make life a little bit easier in terms of tuning and make it a little bit more streetable. You're going to give up some mid-range, but it'll help to carry power a little bit better on the top end. But you can cheat that out, do an intake center line of like 109, and just have something that's going to breathe a little bit better on the back end as well. So it just depends on what you're up to. There's not really a best, because you start getting into some subjective things like drivability is a big one. What I think is drivable, you might not like. You might want more chop. You might want something more radical. You've got good compression ratio, so there's that. You start getting outside of that range, though. Here's the thing, though. Don't forget, don't break recipe when it comes to Hemis and cams. You go all the way to the bottom of the page when it comes to these Hemis, and they can start to get real what's the best way to put it? Shitty down low. And that's one of the reasons why I started looking at putting cams together for shops, is because the cars that I drove at the time, or the cams that were on offer at the time, had way too wide of a lobe separation angle. And they just felt real soft down low compared to the stock cam, which has an incredibly wide lobe separation angle, but has real short duration and fairly high lift. It's actually kind of hell on valve train components, to be honest with you. But it's a situation where, you know, how do you beat a car with that type of cam profile? Well, you just put something together that works and let her eat. So hopefully that helps you. It gives you kind of an idea of a range. You can, if you wanted to, you could drop that down a little bit if you wanted something a little bit less racy. But let me just say this. If you wanted anything a little bit less racy, you'd basically just be shortening down duration. The Sniper grind, that's the one that Quick Break ran in his car. That car went at 4,650 pounds, went on 1130 at 121 miles an hour. That cam builds power everywhere. It's kind of like it makes the car feel like you just added displacement to it. Helps the car breathe better on the top end. That's the Sniper grind, and it's smaller than the cams I was just mentioning in terms of actual duration. Hardly a noticeable low, but it'll give you a bump in power. And it's a bump in power everywhere, from idle through the top of the RPM range. So again, all depends on what you are looking for and what you consider best. Because again, you know, what I like and what I would consider best, you might not like that at all. So anyway, that's the range though of the aftermarket camshafts, at least the ones that I've put together. Gary, thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that. Saying thanks again. Gonna have one of the two shops you poured intakes for do my extra in about 2 to 3 weeks. Can I use it for show and tell then? Sure. Oh, can use it for show and tell then. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, and so on the intake manifolds, the trick, if you want to call it that, the trick really is in the throat. Like if you're talking about the runners, and I don't have my stuff here, you can only get like 6 inches into the runner, right? So because you've got this, I mean, obviously you can't cut the thing in half and then re-weld it. It's plastic. It doesn't work like that. But if you've got casting flash up in there, you can go and pull casting flash out, make the transition smooth. And the way that I try to explain it is, what is in my face? I swear, every time this AC thing runs, it like blows something around in here. It's probably port dust. Anyway, where was the way that I try to describe it is you're blueprinting the intake. You're making the intake manifold work the way that the engineers that put the thing together designed it to. Again, it's a 3-piece unit, and it's like putting together a ham sandwich, man. If everything comes together just right and you get it just right, it's great. You slam the thing together and you got just hammy and sando and the whole innards of it. It's just, it doesn't work out, right? So anyway, long story short on that is, if you do it right, you can pick up some power, you clean everything up inside that thing, and it will work the way that the engineers had expected it to. I've seen some manifolds that look gorgeous. I've seen some that look really, really bad. So, and it doesn't matter the year either. I've seen early manifolds look like hammered ass, and I've seen newer manifolds look great. It's all over the board. It didn't matter where they came from. But yeah, quality control hadn't changed. That has not changed at all. But yeah, I usually my porting season is early in the year. I'll start like February or March, and I'll port manifolds for about a month or two, and then that's about as much of that as I can stand, because it is tedious work. And in terms of the amount of time, Depends on the manifold. 100% depends on the manifold. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. And it's fun to look at him and go, what was he doing? What did he do in here? There's a lot going on in there, a lot of material. In fact, if you just really can't sleep, if you roll over to the Instagram page, go into some of the pictures, you'll see where I've actually shown how much material I've removed. And it's like you'll see the throat, like sometimes I do before and afters. Anyway, you'll see the throat and how much material I pull out, but I'll actually take the crap that I take out of the thing and I'll have it on the table, you know. And at one point I took a ruler and I'm like, look, this is how much stuff I'm taking out of these manifolds. It's quite a bit. So kind of crazy, but thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that, Gary, very much. Oh, hang on a second. Cody's in saying, what's going on, B? We finally able to test my 0 to 60 on the street for my Escape. Very nice. On Conti Pros, good tire. 7.6 seconds while spinning. Cool. Couldn't do any more because of traffic. Nice. Oh, Emmy's saying 36 inches would be about minus 5,200 feet. Yeah, about a mile below terra firma on that. It's funny too, because oh my God. So it was so frustrating, especially with ours, because ours started just absolutely not, like you would see a correction factor of it would add 4% or 5%. That's a lot. Okay. And you're going, no, that can't be right. And then it would yank 4 or 5%. It was started getting real hokey back and forth. So we still can't figure it out. But yeah, I got pretty decent at swapping boards. I think I swapped out 2 boards on that dyno. I'll tell you how happy I was about that. Cody saying the Century soaked in book. Nice. Sovereign saying, hey, Professor B, what's up, man? Saying, speaking of mass airflow sensors, is it true that third-party oiled air filters can contaminate the sensor? Talking about the K&Ns, etc. Yes, kind of. So yes, for sure. And I know this because my VariRam in the Z06 got dirty because of the oiled filters that were in it were over-oiled, and they... And it did suck in the oil, and it coated over time that element. And so what ends up happening is that the element thinks that the car is getting more air than it should at low airflow conditions, like idle, partial throttle conditions, because the extra oil on there is in essence cooling that filament, seeing more fuel. But the O2s are like, no, something's not right, because the O2s are like, no, you're adding too much fuel. You can get some back and forth with that. So I had a firsthand issue with that. And that was literally right after I got that vet. I had to start going through the entire thing because I had to kind of bring that thing back to the land of the living. But yeah, that was one of the issues with that VariRam that I ran into. So yes, it can. Now, if you follow the manufacturer's recommendations for the cleanup and the oiling of your filter, then chances are you're not gonna have a problem, but you got to do it the right way. So the right way to take care of your filters is it's almost like to do it like over a 2-day period. I like to have 2 filters basically ready to go. One that's been oiled, that's basically cleaned, oiled, ready to go, whatever, and then one that's on the car. When it's time to swap them out, take the one that's prepped, put it on the car, and then take the other filter off. Because I like to have at least 48 hours between cleanings, or rather between stages, or in total for cleaning. Anyway, just walk with me on this. So get your cleanable filter, rinse it out from the clean side to the front, rinse the thing out. And then I like to let it sit at least overnight. Don't hit it with compressed air or anything like that. Just set some towels down, let the thing sit. And again, I would let it sit upside down, dirty side down. Let it sit overnight. Obviously, you're going to tamp the thing out just a little bit beforehand. Then you're going to lightly mist it with oil, just enough to barely color it. And then you're going to let it sit dirty side up overnight. And then once you've done that, you've pretty much got it. The problem is that guys will get in there and they think that more is better or something like that. I mean, the car doesn't run on K&N oil, but they'll hammer that thing pretty hard with the oil and immediately put the thing on the car. And so you fire the thing up, go beating on it. Well, you're sucking all this extra oil right out of the filter. And if you've got a mass air meter, it will coat the mass air meter. So follow that protocol. You'll be in good shape with your filters. And if you've got something with a mass air meter, when you swap out the filters, it's always good to get a little bit of the, I'm pointing like you can see what I'm talking about, but mass air cleaner, and especially for the older mass airs. And don't spray right into the filament. Just try to get an indirect hit with it. You don't want to hammer it too hard, but just hit it with a little bit of cleaner, and that'll usually take care of that. So anyway, that was always my protocol with those things. Oh, and Sovereign's asking, what do you think about that Riven versus TRX? Man, look, a Riven. I'll tell you this. That thing is nuts fast. And I'm telling you right now, I mean, look, it's tough to watch it, but that's the difference between having all of your torque available right now to all of your tires versus, an internal combustion. That they're coming. These EVs are coming, and they're fast. And they're creepy fast. They're a lot faster than a lot of people give them credit for. And if you haven't experienced one, you might want to try one out. I know a lot of people don't like them because they've been painted with a, kind of a crappy brush, a little bit overly politicized. But from a power production point of view, they're tough to beat. They're real tough to beat. But yeah, fun video. Thank you for that. Mike's checking in. Hope all is well with you, saying I'm at 33,000 miles on my 5.7 Challenger. Wondering what the telltale signs of a bad PCV are and if I should just replace it now, given how easy it is to do anyway. At 33,000 miles, yeah, go ahead and swap it out. There's nothing to it. The telltale signs of it, well, I'll put it to you like this. A PCV just doesn't fail if you've been changing the oil regularly. It's hard to coke up a PCV valve. So anyway, when you remove it, just shake it. If you hear it rattling, then it's still good. I wouldn't worry too much about it if it's still rattling around. Some guys will, hit it with a little, I don't know, WD-40 or whatever, just to make sure everything's loose, break up any contaminant that might be in there. But if you clog it, modern cars just don't clog up PCVs like older cars would. There's a lot more, the tolerances are so much better. The fuel mixtures are so much better controlled with modern fuel injected cars. You're just not going to see a lot of contaminant getting into those things. But if you have, then you would just not hear the thing rattle. And it's fine to go ahead and replace it. It doesn't hurt anything. Some are saying, Mike, I'd imagine you'd see old spatter on the PCV, not sure in a Dodge. Not really. You would just notice that it would depend on if it was stuck, it would depend on if it's stuck open or closed. If it's stuck closed, you just wouldn't have PCV function. You'd only have a vent out of one side. And if it were stuck open, then it would not drop down under wide open throttle, and you would be sucking in crankcase funk at wide open throttle or at high loads. So that's how you would know. Well, that's what would happen if it was failing. Will's checking in and saying, hey, B, great chat as always. Got the flex. I like it. Saying, what are power numbers for Joker package on a 5.7? So I believe it. So the problem is the dyno that he's tested this thing on has been a little bit inconsistent, but I do know that one of the trucks put down close to 400 to the rear wheels with the Joker. To put it in perspective on a Mustang dyno, because there's so many different dynos, anecdotal evidence is a little bit better. How that car runs is a little bit better than what kind of number it puts down. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So on a Mustang dyno with other cams, because I haven't seen that cam on a Mustang dyno, you would see numbers of like 367 to 372. 372 would be pretty healthy out of a 5.7 on a Mustang dyno. Where they would typically put down, like my truck, for example, put down 320. And I think most of the cars stock would put down like 315 to 325, give or take. Anyway, so you're looking at about, depending on how you would play that number out, you'd look at about like a 40 to 45 horsepower-ish bump in power. At least on a Mustang dyno. Probably a little bit more because that cam really is good on a 5.7. It's actually a nitrous grind that I put together. It just happens to work really well naturally aspirated. But I can tell you this, if you give Justin or Jesse a shout over at Dr. Differential and Speed, they can kind of walk you through what the different builds are that they put that cam in and how they run. I know that the truck that has that Joker cam is also spraying, but wasn't spraying on the dyno when it put that number down. Again, I think that dyno is a little bit friendly. But I can tell you that the first car that cam went into, didn't have any problems dealing with an LS3 6-speed Camaro. So give Justin and Jesse a shout. They can kind of walk you through some more of the specifics. Again, some of the dynos over there have been a little bit frustrating because someone go, oh man, it made a ton of power. And I'm going, it's a little bit high. And then they'll come back on another dyno and it's showing low. And I'm like, yeah, the car would have to be running on 7 cylinders to make that number. So, but I can tell you this, with one of my higher end, if you want to call it that, much more aggressive cams, one of the lower dyno numbers came off of this car and it was like 507. And I'm like, that car should make a little bit more than this is on a 392. Anyway, giving you an idea as far as variances in dynos. I'm sorry. It made 470 or something like that. Went on another dyno and made 507 or 517, something like that. So dynos can be all over the place. I can just tell you that most of the cams in that range, and again, YouTube Dr. Differential and Speed Joker cam, that'll give you an idea for what it sounds like. But if I were to throw a number out there that I'd be confident with on, it just depends on the dyno, man. They're so freaking all over the board. 365 to 370, something like that. Again, if the car put down 320 to begin with, that'll get you close, hopefully. But you got to have the right springs and you've got to have the right push rods to make all of that work as well. It is definitely not a no springs required cam. Sovereign saying 40 watchers, but only 15 likes. Come on, folks, smash that like button. Yeah, smash the like button. And if y'all are on here, you've already hit the bell and all of that. The YouTube analytics are a little bit different. And if you haven't smashed the bell, and I think it has to be personalized or something, got 3 different bells now. I don't know. Anyway, hit the like button, hit the bells, do all that fun stuff. 19's asking, 19 RS3, fun car. Got the flicks. It's saying, ordering a Charger Street Beast, you suggest a Hellcat or Red Eye? I'm stuck with 93 pump gas here in New Jersey. Damn, which one would be better? Well, it would kind of depend on what your budget is going to allow for and how you're going to be using the car. The Hellcat's a lot of fun, but the Charger, if you've got it in the budget, I mean, if you've got it in the budget, go with the red eye every time. It's going to make more power. Charger's heavy, so it can use the power a little bit better than the Challenger. It's going to need a little bit more power just because of the weight of the thing. So, yeah, if it's in the budget, go with the red eye every time. 19's asking, do you know off the top of your head what direct connection is offering horsepower wise for both the Hellcat and the red eye for 93 octane? Kinda. So for the Hellcat, it's just a calibration change, and there's really not a lot going on there. So to speak on what they're doing for the regular Hellcat, not much. The red eye, on the other hand, and I get that you'll be able to do a pulley and they're going to have other stage kits and all of that. But the red eye right now, with the calibration change, I think it picks up 20 horsepower with basically the pre-stage. With the pulley, I forget the actual number. Anyway, it's not a ton. You really don't get into any bigger numbers until you start to get into the pulleyed combinations and the pulleyed combinations with race gas. So they're not huge gains. I think 30 horsepower, something like that, with the pulley, but on 93 octane. I'm not familiar though. Here's the thing. I don't know how in depth those tunes are. I don't know what they look like in terms of transmission tuning. I don't know what nannies that they're leaving in place. I'm assuming that they look a lot like the Roush tunes, with every heat nanny that you can possibly dream up still in place. Could cause some issues on longer hits on the pulleyed cars if that has not been addressed. And we know that just from drag strip testing pulleyed red eyes. So there's just that part of the equation that you have to deal with. Early on with the Demons and the red eyes, it was pretty common for guys to run into heat nannies. Basically, you'd see too much heat coming out of the downside of the supercharger, and it would crack the bypass and drag the throttle back. And you'd feel the car basically nose over at about the 1,000-foot mark. So if that, hopefully they've addressed that, because the pulleyed cars, like I say, you could make them. Well, you wouldn't be making them do it. They would lay over basically like clockwork at about the 1,000-foot mark. Anyway, all that being said, not a lot of power, but again, it is more power and it is warranted power. So again, without seeing a read file on that tune, I have no idea what's going on with that thing. But I can tell you that for the regular Hellcat, I think it bumps it up to like 750 something horsepower. The thing is, though, that's for the newer Hellcats, although it does fit older Hellcats. I don't know really what all is involved, again, without seeing the read file. Hellcats come a little bit hot from the factory anyway. But the big issue that I have with those kits is that it's a pulley without injectors. If you notice, none of those kits have fuel injectors in the kits. And that's a bit of a problem for me, because I know what kind of fueling that I would want for those cars. And to get to that fueling at those boost levels, you really kind of would want a little bit larger fuel injector on there. Now, that being said, the red eyes do have a bit more overhead, mainly because they come with larger injectors than the Hellcats. Again, you get some upgrades with the red eyes that you just don't see in the Hellcats. Not that there's anything wrong with the Hellcats. They're the robust, like one of the most robust kits you can get. But the red eye just takes that to a little bit different level. But it's going to cost you 20 grand to get to that level. Let's see. Sean saying, I've recently been having transmission overheating after driving for long periods in a 2017 RT. I looked on the forums, people were saying that the issue was cooler bypass valve. Could be. Has anyone else had this issue and how do you fix it? I have heard of it, but I've never seen it firsthand. There is a transcooler. There is a transcooler bypass mod, if I remember correctly. But since I've never actually seen it personally, in other words, I haven't worked on a car that's had that issue, I haven't run across it. So that would definitely be a dealer fix for sure. But again, I just haven't run into that issue because I just haven't run into it. I do know that some guys were putting auxiliary coolers on those things though as well. So just something that you might consider along the way. Shift is asking, I road trip my 16 Scat a lot, is an M6. Any issues on running low RPMs in 6 gears, 70, 80 miles an hour, 13 to 1800 RPM? Just ask because I hear Hemis don't like low RPMs. That is absolutely nonsense. So first of all, no, you can run that thing from here to the moon and back at 1500 RPM. It's not going to hurt anything. The issue is at idle. So let me explain what I feel the problem is with the Hemi tick, and all of that. Check. This is like a homework assignment thing. Check your car at idle and see what the oil pressure is. Because yours is a 16. Your oil pressure at idle with the car fully warmed up is probably going to be 32 PSI, something like that. Let me just say this, at 1,000 RPM or 1,200 RPM, it's going to raise up to 42, 44 PSI. Could be even higher than that. And especially at cruise, 1,500 RPM, you'll be fine. It's extended idle time that creates the problem. And quite honestly, I feel that it's extended idle time with that oil pump in the car. To give you an idea, my old 392 would idle at 28 to 32 PSI with the oil hot. My old work truck would idle, I think, at the same oil pressure, if I remember correctly, because this isn't something that I ever paid attention to in that thing, because it always had good oil pressure. At cruise, it was like 47 to 52 PSI. My current work truck and my Hellcat, both at idle, have over 40 PSI of oil pressure. In fact, 44, I think, is the number. They both have the same oil pressure at idle, with my Hellcat getting up usually around 65, and I think my truck will get to 55 or something like that PSI when you're cruising, just putting around in the thing. I think that there may have been a difference with the actual oil pump, the bypass valve setting. Or they made the rotor part of the oil pump maybe slightly bigger in 2017 or 2018, because my stuff idles currently at a significantly higher PSI. We've got trucks in the fleet, we've got like 22 in this region alone. They're all Hemi tradesman trucks. Nobody has wiped out a camshaft that I'm aware of with the newer trucks running whatever new oil pump they're running. Again, mine idles at 44 PSI, 42 PSI. And it doesn't have a thermostat or anything like that. It's running the regular 020 synthetic blend. I got 150,000 miles on my truck. We got some 250, 280,000 miles that are clones of my truck that are running like a top. You know, I'll put you like this. My truck runs better than when it's now than when it did when it's brand new. So don't worry about your car driving it. That's not a big deal. It's extended periods of time idling. And quite honestly, I really do think that the Hemis need about 38, 35-ish PSI minimum at idle. And then again, the newer trucks, at least my truck, 44 PSI. And again, it doesn't spend a whole lot of time idling, but I know some of the trucks in the fleet do, and I don't know of anybody that's had a problem with them. Oh, Cody's in saying, I took your advice on launching at 1600 RPM. The car took off like a rocket with both, but it was really happy when I swapped to the Centuries. Cool. Poster's asking, do you think Direct Connection will have a trans tune if I order 309 gear for my Hellcat through them? Well, the thing is, you don't have to do anything really with a stock car, kind of ish, with a 309 gear, although I will say this, they need to, because technically, yeah, you can drive the thing around and not have any issues. But if you put a drag pack wheel and tire setup on it, take it to the drag strip, you will yip the shift if those rev limits or whatever protocol, whatever subroutine that they run in the Red Eye and in the Demon for predictive shift, if that's not implemented in the tune, it will yip a shift. There are ways around it, but it involves raising rev limits. The right way to do it would be to have the A2 file, find out how to source the predictive shift and get it done that way. But I've always done it a different way. But yeah, I would say that you would be much better off with a 309 gear if you take the car to the drag strip to go with that, to go with a tune that has that gear in mind, if you know what I mean. Hopefully they do that. I say hopefully they do that. We'll see if they do that. Oh, Sovereign saying, cool, I think I'll stick with the OEM paper filters. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of luck with the OEM paper stuff. Sovereign saying, I had a third-party filter I picked up and never used it. Then I heard about possible contamination things, so I never used it. Yeah, you just got to be careful with how you clean them. Oh, Mike's asking, does anybody have any experience with the MicroGuard Select filters? Apparently, they're rebranded Pure later, but I don't know anyone who's used them to ask their opinion of them. All of those filters are actually okay. Any of the aftermarket paper filters are actually not bad. A lot of them, believe it or not, are made by Wix. But yeah, they're all actually not bad. For the performance that you get and for the filtration that you get, it's not that bad. Sovereign saying, talking about the Riven versus the TRX, saying it was tough to watch. It made that TRX look slow. Yeah, God, these new EVs, man, they're difficult to watch. They're difficult to, it's so difficult watching the guys driving them. You know, I spent a lot of time developing a driver skill set, and put it to you like this. Let me kind of step aside here. I took Foxy out today. Hadn't driven the car for a while and wanted to just miss driving Foxy. So I take Foxy out. And there's a spot where if there's no cars coming, I can pitch the thing sideways and cover an entire crossover. I can come into this thing a little bit on the outside, second gear, come basically just do a lift pop with the throttle because it's got really good throttle response, pitch the car sideways and carry this thing, provided that there's no cars coming, and get away with it, all the way through this turnaround. If I'm carrying enough speed, I'll have it pitch sideways. I'll power shift third halfway through it and then carry it still sideways out to this other. Anyway, so much fun driving that car. You have no idea. Anyway, it's one of those things where you can't do that with an EV. Not yet, at least. Not like that anyway. But watching some of these dudes drive these cars, you don't get the, like, they're all impressed by it. And I understand, super impressed. I'm impressed by it. But there's a certain level of defeat that you feel coming into this. It's just going, oh God, how it, so yeah, it's super fast, but it just lacks something. But I get it. They're fast, they're cool, and that's what sells. You got to remember that those numbers, and watch this thing be a TRX. It goes, brah, it goes away, but there's no noise. And it just, I don't know, living in weird times, man. Let's see. Oh, Dan's asking, just wondering if popping out the headlight center caps is safe, or is it really worth it? Will it be an issue getting water or dirt into the engine area? And does it really bring that much cold air in? It actually brings in more cold air than you think. I ran my 392 with both eyeballs popped out. In fact, I had them around here somewhere at one point. Anyway, I had mine popped out for forever, and the only thing that I had a problem with was bugs that would get through. I don't know how in the world. Dragonflies, though. I would get these freaking pterodactyls that would freaking figure out a way going down the highway to go right into the passenger side, because I had both of them open. Right into the passenger side, they'd smash into the ABS block right there. It doesn't hurt anything, but like, how is it that I'm cleaning out dragonflies? Like, dragonflies, really? But yeah, that's the only thing. But yeah, no, you do circulate quite a bit of cold air in there with both of them popped out. Oh, Mike's saying, Dan, when you combine it with the Hellcat lower and a little foam tape to bridge the gap around the headlight. Good point. I almost forgot to bring that up. Always do your foam tape around, like if this is your snorkel, do your, you can use window foam if you need to. It's the strip. Put that around the actual opening on the headlight so that when you slip your snorkel on, you get a tight fit. A lot of guys forget to do that. It's just another, does it make a difference? It makes a difference to me if it's not done. I always do it. So, but yeah, definitely do that. Like I say, as far as, it does help lower the ambient temp underneath the hood, and that helps everything. Dan saying, what about the passenger side? I pop both of them out. I run all of them just going down the road. That's where all the dragonflies go. Some people claim that it cools it down. Does it cool it down? I don't know, but I always had mine out. Gary is checking out. Good seeing you, buddy. Cody's asking, what are my thoughts on an intake manifold spacer? Absolutely unnecessary. Don't even bother it. Okay, so depends on which car you're talking about. If you're talking about a Fox body Mustang, yeah, maybe. But that would be the upper intake to the lower intake. If you're talking about a carburetor spacer, absolutely necessary nowadays with the fuel that we have. But if you're talking about anything for the Hellcat, I haven't seen a benefit. And I mean, there's obviously nothing that's going to help you in terms of spacers with a polymer intake, because it's polymer. It would be the same material that you would use to separate. It's not going to make a difference there at all. Some are saying, how about a high airflow sock? Would that benefit the eyes? Actually, they had, and I had one of these, right? You can still find them. I forget who makes them. They make the little mesh, little wire mesh looking thing. And that some guys would use. I know I had one, and I ended up giving them to somebody. I just had mine wide open. I happen to have them laying around, and I have had 2 or 3 sets of them that I've just kind of happened across, honestly. I think I was going to pop one into the Hellcat, and I was like, nah, I'll just leave everything open. So I just leave everything open with mine. Slowly going fast. One of my favorite names, by the way. I love it. Thumbs up. Scatpack392 is asking, who makes the best ported throttle body for a 2020 392? So if you're asking for the best ported throttle body, that would be Fastman. The 84 or 88 millimeter Fastman, best on the market. If you're asking about who makes the best throttle body in general, that would be Dr. Differential and Speed out of Groves, Texas. And that one looks like, I can show you exactly what that one looks like, because this is the prototype, the old prototype that I use when I'm porting. And it's just a solid block of billet aluminum. There you go. That's what his look like. But yeah, this is, doesn't have anything in there, no mechanicals. This is just the original that I use for porting. Bolt it right up, mark everything in. You can see my marks in there. There you go. Bolt it right up, mark the intake, have everything bolted up really good. Pull everything off and get to sculpting some horsepower. But hopefully that helps you. Some are saying, yeah, mean would work. Slowly going fast. Thoughts on nitrous 5.7 stock block? A lot of people love nitrous. I mean, if you set it up the right way, Nitrous Express or Nitrous Works kit, if you do it really the right way, which is to run a wet kit, run race gas in your auxiliary fuel tank, and control the nitrous and fuel flow based on injector fuel flow, which is what we were doing. It works out great. 100 shot seems to be like the happy medium with those cars. The 5.7, here's the fun thing about a 5.7. I get it. Everybody loves the 392. The problem with the 392 isn't really the 392. The problem with the 392 is the fact that it's got a dadgum HP 70 sitting right behind it. If the 392 had an HP 90, it would be a completely different package altogether. But work with me on this. The 5.7 having the HP 70, the cool thing is you can throw a $125 shot on that thing, especially if you do it the right way, and you won't really exceed any limitations for the transmission. It will just be a really fun cart, and you know, you got a little bit of that, yeah, Dr. Feelgood sitting right there next to you, makes it kind of nice. So nitrous on a 5.7, I know a lot of guys that hit some stock 5.7 short blocks with some significant shots, and they do just fine. So you know, as long as your fueling's right, don't try to don't get greedy with timing. Put a shade lower, go with a 7, like a TR7 plug instead of the 6s, and knock 3 or 4 degrees of timing out of it, depending on the fuel that you're running in your auxiliary tank. Be in good shape. Cody's saying, oh, figured as much, was planning on a throttle body spacer and an intake manifold and port match the intake sides with the manifold. Yeah, I don't, dude, look, save the money for other fun stuff. Yeah, throttle body spacer, negative. Don't do that at all. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna port the manifold, it's gonna be opened up a little bit. Where you open up the manifold is on the intake, really on the inside of the port. You'll open it up. It's kind of a visual thing, but you open it up basically the width of, it's not as much as you think. Yeah, you open it up about as much as the tip of that pin right there. It doesn't look like much, but there is a little bit there. And what you do is you basically take a marker and you mark straight across, and you back the port up just ever so slightly. It's not a lot, but again, just tiny little adjustments is all you're looking at. Just little adjustments, and the main difference is the throat of the thing. Scatpack392 saying thanks, thank you, thumbs up. Oh, Cody's saying trying to get as much air as I can on a stock turbo without having to upgrade it. I know the struggle on that one. Sovereign saying mesh, not mean. I think I knew what you meant. Six two heavy power saying finally went catless mids and man, the butt dyno feels good. So we've done a lot of testing with no cats, and if you've got a lot of extra boost, it may make a difference. But right now, I mean, we're going damn near 960s on stock catalytic converters. We did on a stock Hellcat. We literally went slower when we took the cats off, but slowly going fast. In E85 tune, I have a lot of stations around here, meaning E85 with nitrous. You can, a lot of 85 guys spray. That's not a problem at all. The thing with the 85 is I've been burned with the 85, so I'm probably not necessarily the right guy to be just, yay, E85. I get it. E85 is awesome. You just got to test it. You got to make sure you're getting good stuff. I've had issues with E85 coming out of the ground smelling like E85, but the reality is it wasn't really E85, and it almost caused me to pop a motor once on the dyno. The second time, and I mean, I just happened to look down and notice that the car was throwing a ton of fuel. Anyway, long story short, the second time it happened, I learned from my first mistake, and I smelled the exhaust. The exhaust smelled like gasoline. So it had just enough ethanol in it to, at first notice, you're like, yeah, it smells like 85, but it didn't have that dirty sock, like super dirty gym sock smell that 85 normally has. Anyway, when it was in the car, it's one of those things you kind of notice, but you don't really pay attention to. Anyway, in the car was idling. I went around the back of the car to, finish strapping everything down. And I immediately picked up on the fact, like, this car does not smell like it's running on corn. And that's after the car had been idling on the dyno. In other words, put the fuel in the car, backed it up on the dyno, and it never clicked to anybody else to think. And I'd already lived through that whole scary thing. And so anyway, that's a long story 100 years ago about E85. But Quick Brick, dude, my man had so many problems with the 85 quality that, anyway, test it all the time. But if you've got good 85, yeah, you can run with nitrous. Just remember, though, you have to up your jets for your fueling. You got to run 30% more fuel E85 than you do for gasoline variants. So just remember that you can't just put E85 in the tank. You have to follow the manufacturer's recommendations for the jetting for E85 for your nitrous kit. But it can be done. The other downside to E85, talked about quality, only downside to E85 is you start to run out of range, basically, with E85. If you're running 30% more E85, then just remember that you're going to have fewer hits that you're going to be able to run with. That may or may not be relevant in your case, though. If you're running E85 in the car, I highly suggest staying with E85 for your nitrous kit. If you're running race gas, run race gas for your nitrous kit. It's just a whole lot easier when it comes to tuning and getting the thing fine-tuned. It is definitely better to run the same fuel that you're running in the car, in the kit, in other words. If you're running gasoline, like 93 octane, it's cool to run race gasoline, like Sunoco's GT 260 Plus or Sunoco's GT 260 in your reservoir tank. Roy, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Saying thank you for being on tonight. Got some good info. Cool, man. Thank you for the contribution, brother. I appreciate that. Cody's saying us four-cylinder guys are struggling. I get it. 60 power saying 17 psi max. 17 psi is actually a fun spot for E85. You can actually, with E85, just, you know, thinking about this out loud here, but 17 psi and E85, if I remember correctly, you can actually tune it past MBT with no knock with that setup. So, but yeah, 17 psi. I would say that 17 might be a good place to start considering removing the cats. The car that's running mid nines or at least low 970s is making in that area about 16 psi. So it's right on the limit. But yeah, so I don't know what that is. Let's see. Oh, slowly going fasting. Right now, I'm running recommended 89 cars and 09 Challenger stock. I'm in SoCal, so no 93. 89 is good. The car will love 89 for a long time. And if you decide you want to hit it with nitrous, just put 91 in that reservoir tank. Just don't get real greedy with it. Fuel quality being what it is, I understand completely what you're dealing with. I think 100 shot would still be pretty safe though. All other things being taken into consideration. Timing would need to come down a couple of degrees, actually 3 degrees minimum, actually 2.5 technically, but 3 degrees minimum with a colder plug. Oh, 6.2 saying fastest quarter 9.8 at 142, 146 60 foot. Very nice. That's a fun. So you are at about the max of what I would consider to be the fun zone for the Hellcat. Slowly going fast saying thank you, brother. Kind of right there at the limit of what I would consider the fun part of having these cars. I can tell you that much faster than that can kind of get you into some, it gets you into a place where the car is just not fun on the street. They get a little bit spooky. 62 saying, thank you, Dr. Mason, got the flex, like it. Thank you, buddy. Oh, slowly saying the kit that he has a tap for the fuel rail. Yeah, that's going to be the one. You're going to tap that, put a Schrader valve. Some of the newer fuel rails come with the old school Schrader valve already on them. But yeah, you tap it. Just make sure you clean that thing out. You pull the rail off, blow it out. Make sure you don't get any shavings in there. But yeah, you tap the rail if you have to actually do a physical tap to it. And if you do it that way, it's still a wet shot, but you're using the fuel pressure off of the rail. Be mindful of that. Make sure if you're going to use a kit like that, make sure that you are adding fuel in the tune. Richen the mixture. See, here's the only issue that I have with that is that on the NA cars, you're running at like 55 PSI. You think you can kind of get away with that, but it's a deadhead system. So you're going to be pulling from one side of the rail, which means that you're going to be you will be dropping pressure right on top of whatever injectors you're hitting. So just know that coming into it. We prefer to see a standalone, but those kits do work, but they're limited with the amount of fuel that I would want to try to pull out of that rail. Just my experience with it. It'd almost be better if you Siamese the rails into one with a manifold and then run that into your solenoids. Just remember to clean. And if you're going to run nitrous, just remember once a year, you are going to be replacing your solenoids, aren't you? Yes, you are every year without fail. No ifs, ands, or buts. Replace your solenoids every year with that nitrous kit. And yes, I know it's expensive. I get it. But here's the thing. I've seen them fail. I've had them fail on the dyno. I've had them fail at the truck, which was a bloody freaking nightmare because I had this is no joke. I had back to back 2 different cars that I had been told, sworn up and down, that the solenoids were going to be swapped out. I'm going, okay, cool. These are cars that I would be given to get passes at the drag strip. Go run the car, see what kind of number the thing's going to drag up. No problem. Whatever. It sounds a lot more glamorous than it really is. It's actually stressful because I might as well be wearing a white lab coat. I'm trying to get a specific number, or I'm just trying to get good data on a car. Anyway, it's fun, but it's still a job. It's a fun job, but it's still a job. So yeah, one of them, both of them, the nitrous didn't fire. The fuel fired, but the nitrous didn't fire. So there's nothing worse than staging a car, matting the throttle, and it go wah and lay over. You immediately have to get out of the throttle. But the car came up, both of them on a 1 second delay, 1001. You're expecting the thing to start, like you launch, you're expecting the thing to pour in power on a 1 second delay. And at 1 second, it noses over slightly, and it's like, damn it. And you get out of it immediately. Anyway. Track tails. Ooh. It's just. So yeah, just promise me you're going to be swapping those things out. Because let me tell you what happens. I've had them fail on the dyno, I've had them fail on the track. Both of them not my car. Man, my chair just went down. This freaking damn thing. Anyway, what ends up happening is, if you don't realize, if you're like, oh, it's just not firing, and you stay in the throttle, you are hosing the cylinder down with fuel. Not a good thing. If the nitrous fires and the fuel doesn't, that can be equally as bad. Some will argue that it's worse. The other thing is with nitrous, because I'm kind of a mother hen when it comes to this, always bleed the kit before you turn the car off. What you're going to do is you're going to turn the bottle off. Well, not before you turn the car, before you park the car for the night. Turn the bottle off. Purge the system down. Never leave pressure on top of that nitrous solenoid. I've seen them stick open. I've seen them leak because people forgot to bleed the system down, and they over time may leak a little bit into the intake manifold, go to start the thing, and it grenades all over the place, sending expensive parts and shrapnels and everything else flying into your garage. Never a good thing. I've seen them bad. So yeah, nitrous is fun if you just stay on top of your chores. Cody's saying he's got to get his prep work done. I hear that. Let's see. Sorry, Cody, I started talking about something else. I have no idea. Is it okay to replace what with your who? You can always replace anything. So yes, and no, it might be overkill. Hey, slowly going fast. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Great advice, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Appreciate the contribution to the cause. 6200 power saying, good point. Street driving is definitely sketchy now on loose traction at 65 miles an hour. We'll lose traction at 65 miles an hour. So a lot of this kind of goes, you may or may not have seen the video that I put out, like when to get out of the whole car scene, and the pressure to keep making more power. Your car right now is going to be sketchy, even on drag radials at 65 miles an hour. That's just kind of the world that you live in now. And what I've seen a lot of times is that anytime guys take their car past where your car is, and I mean an angstrom past where your car is, they sell the car, or if they love the car, they will regress. It's not really regression. They will dial it back to a more sensible power setting. that's the best way to go about it. When you get to the point where traction from a reasonable highway speed is questionable, the car's just no fun. But you want to talk about somebody who's so my 94 Cobra with the 427 and the T trim, we used to like to see how long we could smoke the tires over an overpass. I mean, the car was just nuts. Put it in fourth gear and roll onto the throttle and just go woof. Anyway, all the memories. Anyway, you get to a point with some of these cars where if you take it anywhere past that point, it's just not any fun. For a two-wheel drive car, all-wheel drive cars, some of the real higher-end exotic stuff that's really set up to be a very fast car with all-wheel drive, you can get away with more because you have 4 tires gripping the ground. With two-wheel drive cars, it becomes a lot more of a chore, and the last thing you want to do is have something wall hunting just because you stepped on the throttle to try to get around somebody. You just weren't thinking, gave it too much throttle, and the car gets squirrely. I've had it happen, and I've had it happen at some really inopportune times. And so I took up 2 lanes with the Z06 on one hit. So, and that was at 65, literally at 65 miles an hour. So, yeah, it can get really sketchy, and that's why, for safety's sake, only ran those cars on drag radials. And I would never drive them if there was any hint of rain, just because even the simple fact that you're rolling into the throttle could cause the thing to act weird. What I used to do if I was just driving the things is, in other words, if I were taking one of the Bravo packages, again, kind of like your car, mid 9-second car, you're taking to the drag strip to get data for somebody, or they want the time slip or whatever the case is, and they're just not experienced drivers. They need somebody to drive for them. Dude, I'm going down there. I put the thing in 500 horse mode and just cruise. Put it in eco mode and just cruise the thing. Didn't even want to play with that car on the highway because I knew what was coming. So, as a course of habit, I will, on occasion, more often than you might think, drive my car, cruise my car, so to speak, in the 500 horse mode. And it just makes the car a little bit more chill, limits it to 5 pounds of boost. And, it just kind of takes some of the, granted, it takes a lot of the sting out of the car. But if you've got a car with a lot of power, and legit lot of power, like you're deeper into the 9-second range, it makes the car a lot more livable on the street. Just don't forget to put it in 500 horse mode. You get used to driving the thing in 500 horse mode and go to watt the throttle to get around somebody. And next thing you know, things become interesting quickly. So anyway, just my 2 cents on that. But again, thank you, Slowly. Appreciate that, bud. Cody's saying the nitrous solenoids and whatnot, is it okay to replace them after? Oh, you don't have to replace them after every race event. No. You don't have to do that. They're nowhere near that fragile, but the reality is that it's part of the maintenance of owning a nitrous kit. And what guys don't realize is that there is protocol when you run nitrous oxide in these cars, or anything for that matter. But the main part of it is always bleed the kit down. If you're not going to disconnect the hose to the system, definitely purge it before you park the car. I would even go so far as to, you're going to close the bottle up. I would even go so far as to say purge it if possible. You may or may not want to remove lines or do whatever you need to do if the car's going to be sitting for any real length of time, just so that you don't have a live nitrous line. I'm not going to say treat it like a loaded gun. It's not that bad, but in a way it is, because if you forget the car sits for any real length of time, keep in mind, these are cars that are not dailies, right? So they'll sit for extended periods of time. Nitrous solenoids leak. run into a problem. So the fuel solenoid, obviously not as big of a deal. However, if you happen to be running E85, make sure that you're running solenoids that are designed to work with the 85, because E85 has a nasty little habit of creating havoc with parts like solenoids, things that really were never designed to work with a fuel that is corrosive as E85. You can get into a situation where you get a dribbler and it'll just dribble fuel because it's being hit with pressure, but the solenoid isn't open, but it's been chewed up a little bit by the E85, so it might dribble in a little bit. That's usually a symptom of not swapping out solenoids. That'll be an older solenoid, though, normally running into that problem. So, but again, something to consider. And there's a lot when it comes to nitrous oxide. It's not really like what it used to be, where you just put a plate on a carburetor, an arming switch, and then a button. You know, and if you're, and back then, I mean, if you were smart or lucky, then you would have a wide open throttle switch that would only, even after it was armed, only let it fire the nitrous at wide open throttle. It's not really quite like that. You really need to get a little bit, I should say, a little bit more sophisticated, just based on the fact that these cars are making a lot of power from the factory already. Roy is out, battery's dying. See you, brother. Slowly going fast, and I'll stick with 91. Good idea on that. And guys, with that, we are coming up on 2 hours. So I got to pull the chute. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out with me tonight. Would not do this without you. Love each and every one of you. So with that, I'm going to say what I always say. If you're going to sin it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Ray, miss and love you, brother. And we will catch y'all on the next one. How we going, guys? Peace.